Start today. My deepest, sincerest, and most heartfelt apologies to everybody out there. Work is a biznatch, and there's nothing that I can do. Sometimes it just goes and goes and goes. So when it does, and when it goes and goes and goes, we get a late start. But don't worry. I've been thinking long and hard about what we're going to talk about today. And in the light of all the news with the Electoral College laying out all their votes for Joe Biden, in the light of Mitch, Cocaine Mitch, didn't we just love him not that long ago? I feel like just a couple of weeks ago. He was the lion. Now he's just lying. Stood up there and congratulated Joe on his victory. Like we talked about yesterday. Mitch is a good man. What are you going to do? He's going to do what's right. He's going to be righteous. I don't know. Something tells me that there's no way we could have counted on Nancy Pelosi standing up and congratulating Trump or anyone on our side. I think the thing that tips me off is her willingness to spend the last 4 years trying to impeach the guy. I mean, past performance is no guarantee of future results, but I think it's a pretty safe bet. Well, but not our guys. There you go. Mitch stood up there and gave Joe an old attaboy. So now it's time, I think, to lay out some plans as a community. Just in case the worst case scenario comes true. Just in case Biden does take over in January and Trump does hightail it out of there. You see, I understand that there are some hopeful options, some hopeful roads. To be honest with you, I've thought maybe not correctly, or definitely not correctly. But I've fantasized that Trump says, "Yeah, no, I'm not leaving," and he sort of takes over the military and becomes emperor. I've played around with the fantasy. I get it. I know that destroys the nation. Blah blah blah. But, whatever. A boy can dream. But all the same, worst case scenario, Biden takes over, Donald Trump leaves. Worst case scenario, what do we do? What do we do? We talked about this a few podcasts ago. There's nothing really that's going to change immediately. People will still have stock shelves at the supermarket. They'll still have food in their fridge. The electricity will still work. Again, in order to make someone revolt, in order for a true and honest, all-out revolt to happen, People have to feel like they have no options. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it in some places. We're seeing it in New York. We're seeing restaurant owners and the New Jersey gym guys. They racked up close to $1 million in fines. And the thing is, they were put in a position where my options are I go out of business, I can't feed my family, or I stay in business, I keep getting fines and maybe do some jail time. But either way, I'm screwed. So I might as well go down fighting. So I know there's a lot of tough talk on our side. A lot of tough talk. I've engaged in a little of it myself. But the truth is, I got a family to take care of. I got a job to do. Got people that depend on me. And even though I see what's coming, I see the disaster ahead, I don't know, maybe it's a timing issue. Maybe it's a timing issue. Maybe it's a matter of, well, yeah, this could happen. Maybe there's this false sense of hope that keeps me from wanting to react in the ways I might want to react. But whatever the case and whatever the reason, we got to be realistic and honest about what is next. So anyway, I wanted to go through what I think is going to be the best list on what we can expect should Joe Biden become president. There's this little list online I found, I think NPR put it together, of what Joe Biden's first 100 days looks like. Started reading it and I said, you know what, this is going to be the subject of the podcast. Because, man, this guy's got some real radical plans. For all the talk about how moderate he is and how he wants to unify the nation, the things that he has promised so far, already on their face, are crazy far left nonsense. And that's him trying to play it to the center. That's him trying not to scare the potential voters. So I think that it's pretty obvious what's actually going to happen is much, much worse. Let's see if I can pull this up here and I'll share the screen with you. There it is. All right. So here comes January. Joe Biden gets sworn in. We trumpets are depressed, downhearted, sad for what we can see is clearly going to be coming to America. What do? We got this vaccine fought for, pushed for by Trump to put it out there, to get it done. He got it done. They just released millions of doses. They're releasing another few million doses next week or 2 weeks from now. I'm not going to take it. My kids are not going to take it. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe 99% of you guys that listen to me talk aren't going to take it. Now, I don't know. I'm sure that Trump isn't out there trying to harm people. I'm sure that some part of him believes that this vaccine is a good thing. Some part of him must think that, he's doing something good for America. And I guess if the vaccine works, maybe he is. Maybe for the old folks, it's something useful to take. Maybe it has all kinds of horrible carcinogens or terrible things that it can do to you over time. But if you're 70 years old and diabetic, maybe you're going to outlive those symptoms, and at least you don't die with the coof. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know the answer for me and my family is we're not going to take it. The question I have, though, is that going to be an option? I mean, we already had Joe Biden came out and said, the federal government cannot mandate mask wearing. And it wasn't, a couple of weeks after he had said that he came out and said, we are going to mandate mask wearing. He had made it clear, the federal government can't mandate a lockdown. It's unconstitutional, he said, in one of his rare moments of clarity. And now he's talking about 100 days. 100 days. I saw a tweet that said 100 days is the new 14 days to slow the spread. That's true. We're coming up on a year of this madness. And Joe Biden, even with the much expected and anticipated vaccine, is still talking about doing 100 days. So if he's willing to, by his own admission, piss on the Constitution, then what else is he willing to piss on the Constitution over to get his first 100-day agenda passed? If we go through this list, most of the stuff, early on with the COVID stuff, we know he's going to build a task force filled with brown people and people with vaginas. Can't call them women anymore. I mean, again, the point of all this is, diversity. Not diversity of thought or education or interest. Diversity of skin color, because the left are the only racists left in America. But early on this list of the first 100 days, we see this very interesting thing here. Push for immediate coronavirus legislation. He's talking about increasing and expanding coronavirus testing. He's talking about something he calls racial and ethical disparities task force, which Kamala Harris is apparently someone who's put something like that together in the Senate. Now you tell me, what does racial and ethical and ethnic disparities have to do with COVID? They're using COVID as this Trojan horse to push in all of their anti-racist policy. We talked about this a few podcasts ago as well. The banking industry. They're looking to force all banks to loan an equal percentage of any monies that they lend out. An equal percentage of that money has to go to black or brown, depending on the percentage of the population that they occupy. So now, banks need to find a way. Some bank in Whiteville, Wisconsin needs to find a way to lend 13% of all their lending dollars to blacks or browns, even if they're not living in that area, even if they're not, they don't have access to minorities, wherever that bank is situated. He's talking about canceling $10,000 in student debt for all Americans, $10,000 per person. The far radical left, the Ilhan Omars and the AOCs, they actually hit him on this. They actually complained about this. They came out and said no less than $50,000 of student loan debt per person. Anything less than that, and they're going to jump about it. Now, let's go on to the next one. Release a vaccine distribution plan. And this is interesting to me because the push from Biden and from his task force is going to be one very simple thing, and that is everybody gets vaccinated. And that's that. That's going to be their push. That's going to be the focus of their laws moving forward. And I think that by and large, they're going to try to do it in a sneakily, stealthful way. I think they're going to come out and say, well, you know what? Public schools, if you want your kid to come to public school, they got to be vaccinated against measles, mumps, rubella. They're going to also have to be vaccinated against COVID. Vaccines will go out and people will get vaccinated and many others will not. COVID will come back year after year in ebbs and flows. It'll be here forever, folks. And so at the very next opportunity, the very next spike that they see, they'll declare it a health crisis and they'll start putting even more demands. What if they say, well, if you want to walk into any federal building, you need to show proof you've been vaccinated? We learned with Trump in Portland, the executive has a great deal of control over federal buildings, federal parks, federal property in each and every state. They can basically declare martial law on those properties. And so what happens when Biden says, hey, look, federal buildings, public schools, parks, you're going to have to show your COVID card. Hell, if you took the Moderna version, you don't even have to show that. They'll be able to scan the area where the injection site was, and that damn stuff leaves a light-emitting chemical underneath your skin. You'd be marked. The stuff's called luciferin, by the way. And then what happens if you're like me or like you guys and you've got kids and you say, you know what, fine. Public school doesn't want to take my kid, no problem. I'm going to start homeschooling. But my kids are not getting this vaccine. And you know what else? I can't go into your federal buildings. I can't go to Yellowstone Park. No problem. No problem. I'll fish in my backyard canal. But I'm not getting this vaccine. But then, we notice spikes. Maybe this little virus changes or evolves, or maybe the CDC just tells us that it does. Who the hell knows anyway? And then all of a sudden, this national emergency becomes a health crisis for children. All of a sudden, parents that refuse to vaccinate their kids, well, hell, that's child endangerment. Now, it sounds crazy, but in Michigan, the school board out there, they voted and they decided that if they have a trans child in their classroom, if they have a child that claims to be of the opposite sex, to which they are obviously, if that child tells the teacher, hey, I'm trans, but don't tell my parents, they wouldn't let me transition, the Michigan School Board said, we are mandated reporters of child abuse. And this is obviously and clearly child abuse. A parent that does not support their 7 or 8 or 13-year-old child transitioning is an abusive parent, we need to notify Child Protective Services. Now, if they can do that with that ridiculously non-scientific, idiotic, moronic, trans stupidity, how much more so can they do it with the COVID vaccine? And I assure you they will. Now, this is just first 100 days, folks. Just the first 100 days. COVID-19, he says, he's going to listen to science and rejoin the WHO and keep Fauci as a close advisor. Fauci, who is slated to basically have a money printing machine once all these vaccines are out and about. And listen to the World Health Organization. That's the same organization, in case you don't remember, that told us that China was super open about this COVID thing. China, they came right out and told us day one, moment one. Oh yeah, China, this is not China's fault. They actually stayed eerily silent when China started saying that the U.S. military brought COVID over to their shores. There wasn't any jump from the WHO. Nobody there said, yeah, China's full of crap. The WHO that called our lockdown and blocking people from China coming into our nation, called that racist. That's the guys. The ones that said not to wear a mask. The ones that said this was no big deal early on. Rejoining the WHO is following science? No, it's not. But we all know what it is. The WHO is just one more Chinese tentacle, another way for China to infiltrate our nation, another way for China to be able to get away with murder in the world of health sciences. Because you see, although the United States was giving the WHO the lion's share of their funding, China was pulling the strings. We kept feeding the organization piles and piles of money, but China kept feeding the heads and the upper level guys generational wealth. And so, needless to say, their loyalties lay there. But Joe Biden wants to rejoin. And we all know that anything that benefits China is A-OK with good old Joe. He wants to reverse the Trump corporate tax cuts. Won't take long before manufacturing starts to shut down again. It won't take long at all. Because something interesting that needs to be understood about this is manufacturing that ramped up and exploded under Trump. Those manufacturing plants, all that industry, hasn't even made a return on their investment yet. These people come in and they build these plants and they ramp up their steel mills and they ramp up their processing plants, and they expect to start turning profits year 5, year 6. This isn't something that just happens overnight. Not only that, we had COVID. And so we had some sectors explode and some sectors absolutely collapse. Biden comes in and says, you know what? Enough with these corporate tax cuts. As a matter of fact, we're going to raise your taxes, just like he said. With me, you're not going to have a tax cut. I'm going to raise your taxes. At that point, nobody's going to stand around and say, well, let's see what happens. They're already behind the 8 ball. Now, we've talked about a bunch of negative things. Before we go on, let's talk about what the plan is. What's the plan? Let's go back here a second. Talk to me. What's your plan for a potential mandatory vaccination? There's the number. If you want, give me a call. We'll talk about it on the podcast. What's your plan? I'll tell you what my plan is. I'm not going to vaccinate my kids. I'm not going to take it. My wife's not going to take it. That's where we're at. If it gets as bad as what we talked about, where it all starts to fall apart, and it's child endangerment, and they start talking about, taking away my kids, I don't know. Most likely I'll contact a sneaky doctor somewhere in South Florida and get some note that it's been done, that I've got myself the vaccines. That's probably going to be my approach. Would I love to stand here and beat my chest and say over my dead body? Yeah, sure. Sure I would. Is that going to be the approach? I can't see how it could. Got a 3-year-old baby daughter. I'd like to hang around, see her grow up. And again, this is the big disadvantage that we have on the right. We're the ones with something to lose. We're the ones with something to lose. So that's that on the vaccine. The tax cuts, the corporate tax cuts being raised, I've already got a plan for that. I actually have a couple of plans. I've said it many, many times, and I hope you guys will listen. Socialism, and when socialism really takes hold in a nation, that's when billionaires and paupers are made. In a socialist country, there's really no room for middle class. Now you could see it in Europe. Where do people live? The vast majority of people in Europe and England and Switzerland, all these places, they live in these little cubby holes. And they're the well-to-dos. They're the considered the middle class. They live in an 800 square foot apartment. Why do you think IKEA exists? Because they need a bed / dinner table / a storage chest all in one. Little apartments, little holes, and little cars, and most of them take public transportation. The standard of life starts to decay in socialist countries. And so if you just sort of get along to go along to get along, if you just let you trudge through the daily routine, little by little, any savings you have, the value tanks. Any assets you have, they're worth less and less and less. As the dollar loses value, you think you got a big wad of cash under the mattress? It's the equivalent of burning $1 a day. Because the value just being sucked right out of those bills. So keep an eye. Keep an eye on those new socialist programs. When Biden and Kamala come out and say, lending needs to be more racially fair, you find a way to sneak in on that program. You get yourself some bankers, meet some bankers, and start talking to them. Say, look, this is what's coming down the pike. In my case, my plan is to help franchise. I got a couple of business, people in business that have little businesses. I said, well, let's make a franchise plan. The banks are going to be dying. They're going to be chomping at the bit to lend any amount of money to minorities if this law goes through. Well, why aren't we positioned to sell this kiosk business, this scented oils business, as a franchise to a local black family that wants to be an entrepreneur? The bank will lend them whatever cash they need. You sell them the business. And now, the socialist program can show another black business owner helped by the program. The bank can show another $100,000 loaned out. And you, whether you be white, black, Chinese, whatever, you're in the loop. Now, if this is successful, I don't recommend you go out and buy a Ferrari. Every dollar you can scrape legally, mind you, off of these, money funnels that the government is going to start putting up everywhere, you put it into something that's self-sustaining. For me, it's somewhere between 5 and 20 acres, goats, meat rabbits. That's the future. I'm telling you. I'm done with city life. I'm done. God willing, I want to hit 60 years old and be in a position to never worry about another meal. I want nothing but miles of empty space between my house, my sniper's nest, and the horizon. I want to see anybody that's coming. I want to see them coming from way out. So keep your eye on all these things. Any kind of grants that are going out, any kind of programs like that. Like I said, the people who can position themselves to get in the middle of that, they're gonna be swimming in it. I tend to swim a lot with God's help. All right, let's go over a few more of these, and then I gotta go. But I don't know. I hope this stuff is helpful. You guys tell me in the chat if this is helpful to you guys, because you know what, despair is for sissies, and I'd much rather be in a position of working something out and planning for the future. If it's gonna come anyway, then I gotta be in a place to take care of me and mine. All right, environment. Well, we all know about his love for the Green New Deal. He's going to create a whole bunch of different messes when it comes to the whole Green New Deal. If you're in construction in any way, if you are in any kind of building development, architecture, if you're in any kind of business like that, get ready. Get ready. Position yourself. Contact hemp people. And ask them, hey, can you make hemp insulation? Because somewhere, somehow, Biden and Kamala are going to carve out billions, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars, for some asinine plan to have folks swap out their conventional, plastic and fossil fuel-based insulation for renewable insulation. And the guy that's got the contact and that can get a couple of 100 million square feet of hemp insulation is going to set up their great-grandchildren financially. See here, this is the thing, folks, and people confuse, when I talk about this, they confuse what I'm saying and how I'm saying it for giving up. And I get it. I understand. It sounds like, oh, well, you're throwing your hands up and it is what it is and you're just going to go with the flow. And I'm not. There are some non-negotiables that I don't intend to bend on. But you got to realize we're not fighting an equal fight here. We're not fighting an honorable enemy here with any intention on following any rules. Hell, I don't think, for the most part, we're even fighting men. It's more a spiritual battle than anything else. But ultimately, what we need to make a decision on is, well, like, these are the true and hard lines. We need to be honest with ourselves. Forget the bravado, forget the chest pounding and what feels good to say. We got to be honest with ourselves and recognize really what does it have to look like for me to risk my life, my family, my home, and my future? What has to happen really? We always talk about, well, if they come for my guns. Well, I think maybe step one would be for me to hide my guns. And no, isn't that most likely what most people will do? Biden says, oh, AR-15s are banned. You need to sell them. You need to return them. It's a mandatory buyback. If he tries to pull something like that, I know the instinct is to say, hell no, I'm showing up to Washington, D.C. with my AR-15s and come and take it. But honestly, really? When you look around and look at your family, your kids, and everything else, and all that you stand to lose, wouldn't you most likely the first step be hide them? File a police report with a buddy cop saying, somebody stole my AR-15s, darndest thing. Kicked my door down. I had a TV on that wall, it's gone, and they found my ARs. Yeah, they're gone. Yep, all 17. Gone. And so if that's going to be the play, then let's admit to ourselves that that's going to be the play. Let's not sit around and fantasize and circle jerk about the grand uprising. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. All right. This is getting boring. All this other stuff we know about. I honestly didn't read this far along. And I should cut off the podcast pretty soon. But if you got a chance, go ahead and Google Joe Biden's 100-day plan. The stuff that's in here is crazy. Racial equity, extend the Voting Rights Act. You know what that's about. They want to go ahead and put federal, violent felons and all that stuff, give them the right to vote. Instantly giving themselves millions of new voters. Immigration, he wants to do a 750% increase in number of refugees that we take in. He wants to do away with the wall. He wants to do away with making immigrants wait in Mexico when they're applying for asylum. He wants to allow them into the interior of the country. He's going to make the DACA people citizens on the first day, he says. Bottom line, Joe Biden's a disaster. We all know it. The left in this country is radical and too far left, and the plans and the designs that they have for our nation are designs of destruction, and will certainly break this nation in half. in the case of a worst case scenario, should Biden go into office in January, I'm just here to say we need a plan. We need to make a plan. We need to support each other in that plan. Figure out a way at the end of it all to be self-sustaining, to be able to defend ourselves, protect our families, provide for ourselves. You know what? We have a nation of people that have woken up a lot in the last 4 years. Trump has woken up a lot of people, made them realize a lot of things. Brought a new level of understanding and political awareness to people in this nation. And even still, they're the minorities. People that really understand politics and what's going on and what it means to have a Biden administration, they're just the absolute minority. I don't know, maybe it all descends into war. Maybe we fight it out once and for all, and whoever is left standing wins. Maybe we have a peaceable divorce, and we just chop this nation in half and have a trading partner with the Western states. But most likely, the 60 to 75% of Americans that are absolutely asleep, have no idea about anything political. They're just in the daily grind, and as long as the local supermarket has their favorite brand of bread, they think everything's hunky-dory. As long as they are still there, blind and deaf and dumb, most likely the way this all ends up is not much happens. Not much happens. And if that's the way it plays out, then make sure that at least for you and yours, you've secured yourself. You've secured your daily bread. You've secured your family's safety. All right. I'm out of here. I want to thank you guys for listening and for joining the podcast each day. If you would, please share the podcast, share the links, subscribe, help me get to 1,000 subscribers as fast as possible. And that is, hold on, I got a comment here. On it'll never happen. We look like we're pretty much done, and I'm tired of the Q zombies saying trust the plan. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. More and more and more, it looks like to me like the page will turn. It'll be January, it'll be February, it'll be March. Biden will be in charge, and nobody will do jack. And little by little, they'll keep chipping away at our liberties and at our nation until there's nothing left. And then it'll be too late. But not for me. Like I said, with God's favor and God's help, I plan to be set up pretty well, locked down pretty tight, and securing the future for at least as many generations as I can. All right, now for real. I'm out of here. Thanks you guys for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one.